What's up everyone, Alex here. So I just wanted to take the time to thank everybody who watched my gaming in my 40s video that I released around my birthday. That was really cool that so many of you have shared how y'all are dealing with this massive backlog of games and how you're dealing with RPGs in general. And speaking of which, RPGs are typically lengthy, and when I go to the comments, a lot of you keep saying that in order for an RPG to be epic, that it has to be super long. Like we're talking like above 30 hours and such. And so a few weeks ago, I posted a poll on the community tab asking, what defines a short RPG or JRPG? And many of you have actually said that it's roughly between an hour, which I don't never really played like an hour of an RPG, up to about 30 hours. And so I took it upon myself to ask my YouTube friends to share some of their favorite short RPGs like in this video and kind of show that sometimes the shorter experiences are just as important as the lengthy ones, because it doesn't matter if a game is long provided that they spend the right amount of time to establish the immersion and the characters as well as its driving narrative. These are all very important, and sometimes certain RPGs, let's face it, take too long to get there. And before we actually get into my friends' picks, I just want to note that the chapter markers for this video actually include the main story completion and the main story plus extra completion time as compiled from how long to beat. So every single person here is going to have their own different completion time. So I thought that it would be nice for you to know, like generally speaking, how the rest of the community fared in terms of how long they played these games so that you can make the decision for yourself. And of course, because there are chapter markers, feel free to bounce around if you so wish. Anyway, enough preamble, let's get right into the games.
Hi everyone, Miss Mandia here. I was really excited when Alex reached out about this video because I have the perfect recommendation for a JRPG that is both incredible and super short. And that is Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure, which is a charming turn-based RPG that you can comfortably beat in under 10 hours. It came out on the PS1 in 1998, but has a remaster that is currently available on Switch and Steam. The story is about a girl named Cornette, who goes on this grand adventure to rescue a prince who has been turned into stone by a witch. Now, the main storyline is admittedly a little cheesy, but it's balanced with a lot of self-aware writing and goofy humor that lands really well. The game has random encounters that take place in a tactical, grid-based system. Cornette is a magical puppeteer, so she can command puppet friends to aid her in battle. There are tons of recruitable puppets in the game, and they each have their own battle style, so you can have a lot of fun customizing your party builds. And as you might have gathered from the title, it is a musical RPG, so there are a handful of times throughout the story where the characters will break out into song and dance. In my opinion, both the musical numbers and the rest of the soundtrack were really well done. The game is full of whimsical and dreamy tracks that really complement the fairy tale-esque setting. All in all, I think Rhapsody is a fantastic RPG. I played it for the first time last year, and it immediately became one of my favorite games, just because of how heartwarming and comforting I found the experience. Like I said, most of the story is quite lighthearted and silly, but somehow it still manages to deliver a really touching and memorable finale. For me, the only downsides are that the game is not very difficult, and also has a very unbalanced encounter rate that might drive you a little mad at times. But even with those things, it's some of the best 10 hours I have ever spent in a game. So if you're interested, I think it's definitely worth taking a look at. Thanks for having me on, Alex.
What's going on, everyone? This is Taylor from The Gaming Shelf, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite short JRPGs, and that is Eternights. Now, this is a game that can be beaten in probably 10 or fewer hours, but it is just jam-packed with value. Now, the best way I can pitch this game is Persona with action combat. Essentially, you're in South Korea, some kind of virus breaks out, and now you're stuck on this train trying to figure out how to cure this virus. And so it's set up very much like Persona, where you need to complete a dungeon by a certain day, but but then in the morning time, you can spend time with your friends as you collect them. You can even date them, and depending on which one you choose to romance, the ending will change, and I gotta tell you, the ending is pretty wild. And all the characters are really interesting as well. I loved learning about their backstories. It was really hard for me to decide which character I wanted to romance because they were so interesting. And then the combat and the actual dungeon crawling is cool as well. Basically, you're the only one that can attack, but you have two characters that come with you and they can provide support with sort of like either healing abilities or like fire attacks, stuff like that. And the game sort of has this rhythm like combo system to it. You can kind of do regular attacks, but then you have to do these QTE events to do big damage or to finish off enemies. And it also has that signature perfect dodge that you might find in something like a Platinum Games title. And it just has a very unique look and vibe to it. That kind of purplish, pinkish look is always throughout the game. It's always very dark and moody. And as someone that lives in Seoul, I think it's really cool that a game takes place there. There's just very few games out there like that. So overall, I really loved Eternights. I hope you guys check it out. And thanks, Alex, for having me on this collab. And I hope to see you guys over on my channel, The Gaming Shelf.
Hey, this is Emily from Orbitology, and short JRPGs are a fantastic way to help avoid burnout. And I wanted to highlight one in particular that clocks in just under 22.5 hours, and that is Ys Origin. This is a prequel game that is a little bit different from the rest of the Ys franchise in multiple ways. It still offers that same buttery smooth experience when it comes to the action combat style. However, this time around, you are no longer playing as the typical main protagonist in the Ys franchise at all. Instead, you have your choice of a few different protagonist options. Now, I mentioned that Ys Origin could take about 22.5 hours to complete the main story and all the extras. However, your playthrough could actually be much shorter than this, especially if you choose to stagger them, because it relies on the replayability of the playthroughs, featuring the different main characters with their different skill sets and abilities, scaling up the Devil's Tower in order to reach the goddess at the top to help you with the demonic invasion that's happening in the world. So I think Ys Origin is a great choice if you're itching for a short action RPG experience that also has quite a bit of replayability, if you so choose to stagger out each playthrough.
Hey everybody, it's FemTrooper, and thank you, Alex, for having me on to talk about my favorite short JRPG, which of course is Super Mario RPG. I have loved this game since it came out when I was a kid. It's one of the first RPGs I ever played, so I loved it. I love Super Mario and all the characters associated with it, so it's a really fun world and totally makes sense for an RPG. And so it's really fun because you get to go on this big adventure, and it's not the typical Mario story because Bowser's in your party. Really cool. Some new characters to the Mario universe, which we haven't really seen again, which is unfortunate, but great cast of characters and a really fun battle system, which has that time thing where you have to press buttons at a certain moment to get more damage, and sometimes I think that turns people off, but I really like it because it's something different, and once you get it, you're gold. Like, it's really fun. It's a really good system. Of course, the music in this game, almost 30 years later, we're all still listening to it. We're all still loving it. It is so, so good. And I can't say anything bad about this game. Maybe the worst thing is that it's short and that you kind of wish it could be longer because you wish you could be in that world so much more, which is exactly why I would like a sequel. This game is great for beginners. It's a great place to start if you've never played a JRPG. So honestly, give this game a go. It's fantastic. Thank you, Alex, for having me on. And of course, I hope to see you guys at my channel.
Hey Alex, thanks for having me on. It's funny you should ask because I recently did a top 10 video talking about my favorite short RPGs under 20 hours. But the fact that I have a little more wiggle room, I can actually talk about one of my favorite games of all time, which is Terranigma. Terranigma is an action RPG that was only released in Europe and Japan when it was originally released for the Super Nintendo all those years ago. If you're familiar with Illusion of Gaia and Soul Blazer, this is essentially the third in the Heaven and Earth trilogy. Terranigma is the pinnacle of what I would call the 2D action RPG. Games like Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore. Terranigma has some of the absolute best controls. It feels so absolutely fluid. This interesting story that takes place within our world, where you play as a young boy, Ark, who's trying to resurrect the world after some terrible catastrophe. The game features tons of real-world locations and several emotional gut punches that you just are not expecting. For me, it just doesn't get any better. Just some of the absolute best that you can experience on the Super Nintendo, and it's just a shame that it didn't come out in the United States back in the day, because I feel like if it were released along its contemporaries in the United States, it would be remembered similarly among the greatest that we got from the Super Nintendo, alongside the likes of Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. I feel like Terranigma is one of those games that you sometimes hear about and then think to yourself, well, if it was that good, I would have played it by now. But the reason you probably haven't is that the legendary developer actually went under after a clumsy transition into the polygonal era of action RPGs, which has left the rights to the game in some kind of intellectual property purgatory. So it's not in any collections, it's not on any online service, so if you're American or can't drop a few $100 on the game, emulation is legitimately your only option to experience the game. And for the cost of free, what have you really got to lose?
Hi there everybody, this is David over at the channel David Vink, and thank you so much for Alex for having me on. Whenever Alex asked me what game I would think would be like a quick game that you can get through relatively quickly, I thought immediately of Suikoden. Now, there's a lot to do in this game. You have 108 characters to recruit after all. You don't have to do that, but you're an RPG player, so that you know that you are. But it's kind of quick in this game. You can do that in about 10 to 15 hours. It doesn't take all that long. Here you play as the son of a general of the Scarlet Moon Empire, and you're possessed by one of the 27 true runes, the Soul Eater rune. Arguably like the coolest rune ever. So you go around and you rebel against the correct empire as you kind of build up your rebel army base with all these characters that you're going around recruiting in order to bring about peace to this war-torn land. And there's all sorts of different ways that you can battle through this, with just like turn-based random encounters with 6-person parties that are lightning quick. There are one-on-one duels, which take place in like a rock, paper, scissors fashion, and even all-out brawls and war battles, which is more like a strategy RPG sort of thing. It is a ton of fun, and there's a lot to do here, and there's a reason why this is a cult classic and why it started such a long-running series too. And we should be getting, a remake, a collection of not only this game, but also the sequel as well from Konami, and that was supposed to come out last year, but it still ain't here, so who knows whenever we're going to be getting that. But anyway, in the meantime, you can definitely enjoy the first game. Thank you again, Alex, for having me on, and I hope to see all of you over at my channel, David Vink, in the future. Have a good day.
It's Miss Bubbles. Now how about a cute, cozy, quirky, and funny JRPG? This one has a cast of characters that is absolutely memorable. I'm choosing Sakura Wars, which you can beat in 20 to 25 hours. This is a mix of mech-centric combat and dating sim in one, where you play as a former Imperial Japanese Navy officer with a new task. You're now the captain of the Imperial Combat Review Flower Division, with a team of women with magical powers that need your help in delivering better theatrical performances. The cast is voice acted, but there is no English dub, in case you need to know that. The characters are whimsical and very fun to interact with. You can chat with them using a lip system, where you can choose what to say, and that will impact how the girls think about you. And of course, you can choose which girl you'd like to date. The music in Sakura Wars is so uplifting. It made me really excited, not only for the theatrical performances, not only for the combat performances, but then also the general background music that was playing while I was playing the game. You have lots of content to enjoy, including the mech-based combat system. You hack and slash your way within battlefields that have platforming elements in them, while dodging enemy attacks and using special abilities to take down enemies. Then you have other slice of life elements, where you might be tasked to collect tickets for a concert or help out with the restaurants, but I'm gonna leave those small quests for you to discover. However, there are moments where you might choose one thing and then Kamiyama says something else. These moments just made me go like, no, that's completely not what I wanted to say. There's one time I walked into a girl's bathroom, so like, that is not what I wanted to do, like please. But I feel like these moments, even though they can be annoying, they did not deter me from enjoying the overall story and gameplay here. So I really cannot recommend Sakura Wars enough, and if you've played it, I would really love to know who you romanced. If you love RPG and cozy gaming goodness, definitely stop by my channel, and thank you so much to Alex for having me today.
Hey friends, it's Brandon from Just the Gems. Thanks so much to Alex for having me on to talk about one of the games that genuinely moved me the most, despite its relatively short length. I'm talking about Omori. This is a game that uses the familiar and nostalgic trappings of a game like Earthbound to draw us in, but it is so much more than nostalgia bait. Omori tells us two stories. One about a sad teenager named Sunny who hasn't left his house in ages, and the other about a young boy named Omori living in an imaginary world with his friends. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots and see what's happening here, but that doesn't make the storytelling any less powerful. Combat also draws inspiration from Earthbound with its first-person perspective and extremely out-there enemies, but it brings so much of its own creativity to the table that no one can rightfully call it a copycat. The battles in Omori are based around emotions. Characters and enemies can be placed into various emotional states, happy, sad, angry, among others, and a character in one emotional state will be strong or weak against characters in others. A big part of the strategy is using skills and items to change your and your enemy's emotional states to maximize damage. It's a really clever mechanic, and they get a lot of mileage out of it. Beyond the mechanics, the battles also have a gorgeous hand-drawn aesthetic, sort of like sketches come to life. There are tons of subtle animations that really draw your attention to the details. The tragedy that is the mystery at the heart of Omori is best experienced spoiler-free, so I won't say too much about the story, except that it is one of the most profound and true feeling stories I've experienced in a video game. Tonally, the game does a great job of striking a balance between the dark and heavy and the light and absurd, but at its core, Omori is a story of heartbreak. If you can stomach the content, it's absolutely a game worth experiencing for yourself.
Hey everybody, Eric here. Thank you so much, Alex, for having me on today to chat about a RPG that you can beat in under 30 hours. And when you asked me, my mind went straight to one of my favorite handheld titles of the early 2000s. That's right, Golden Sun. Released in 2001 for the Game Boy Advance, Golden Sun is a classic turn-based JRPG with a little bit of Pokemon and a little bit of Zelda sprinkled on top. The story starts in the village of Vale with two friends, Isaac and Garrett, who possess Synergy, a magical power tied to the elements. One day their village is attacked by a group who seek to steal the elemental stars, artifacts capable of unlocking the elemental lighthouses of the world. During the attack, some of their friends are kidnapped and the town is left in ruins. From there, Isaac and Garrett decide to take matters into their own hands, stop this group, and then recover the elemental stars. Their journey takes them across the world of Wayard, where they encounter puzzles, battles, and other Synergy adepts. Now, Golden Sun's combat is classic turn-based, featuring random battles and boss battles, of course. The unique gameplay element of Golden Sun, though, is the Jin, elemental creatures that provide various effects like stat boosts, special powers, summons, and there are 4 types of these Jin. Venus, which is Earth, Mars, Fire, Jupiter, Wind, Mercury, Water. Characters have elemental affinities linked to them, like Isaac is Venus and Garrett is Mars. Synergy spells based on the elemental affinity can be used in and out of battle for puzzle solving, healing, and combat. And using Jin in battle can trigger special effects, like when enough Jin are on standby, you can use powerful summons. Golden Sun encourages exploration of the world with the Synergy, which you use in like a puzzle format, like Zelda, of course. And for a Game Boy Advance title, Golden Sun boasts very impressive 2D sprite art and richly detailed environments, and the music is really great as well. Great story, great game. I love Golden Sun. Even today, this game just has such a unique charm, the same charm that it had when I played this game growing up. So there you have it, Golden Sun, one of my favorite games of all time and easily the best turn-based game on the Game Boy Advance. And it's a game that you can beat in around 20-ish hours. I think the last time I played it was about 16. Anyway, thanks so much, Alex, for having me on. Great to be here today chatting about Golden Sun. On to the next game.
What's going on, everyone? Slam Zany here, and a huge thanks to Alex for having me on today to talk about short RPGs. When he reached out, there was one game that immediately came to my mind, and that was Live Alive. In my opinion, there is no better game out there that fits the criteria for an amazing short RPG. What really sets Live Alive apart is how each of these different stories can be experienced individually, and then they all eventually come together. The game handles this in some really innovative and unpredictable ways. Considering this is a remake of a very old RPG, this is super impressive to me because still to this day, this formula feels incredibly fresh and unique. As you progress, you start to see the connections between the chapters, and by the end of the game, everything comes together so nicely. This kind of storytelling is super rare in games today, and I really appreciate Live Alive for that. I also love the gameplay variety. Since each chapter is set in a different time period and genre, the gameplay mechanics change to fit the story. One chapter might focus on stealth, while another emphasizes combat or puzzle solving. This keeps the gameplay feeling engaging and prevents it from becoming super repetitive. The mechanics themselves still stay in line with the overall structure of Live Alive, but are slightly altered to fit each story. This way you're not having to relearn a brand new game each time you start a new chapter. Everything in Live Alive is just so well put together, and it's nice because there are a couple of stories that I really enjoy coming back to. When I feel like going back and playing it again, it's nice to be able to hop into one of those stories and replay them for a short, enjoyable run that can be finished in one sitting. We've all had those evenings where we want to sit down and play something on the shorter side, something we can finish quickly, and while the entirety of Live Alive will take you around 20 or so hours to complete, each of the stories can be completed in a couple of hours, some even shorter. Being able to sit down for a play session and experience a full story in one go is so incredibly rewarding, but as a whole, you can see everything come together cohesively in a relatively short playthrough as well. It really is the perfect fit for someone looking for a shorter JRPG. Thanks again to Alex for having me on. I hope to see you all on my channel.
Hey, what's up everyone? Alex here again, and I want to talk about my pick for this video, which is Trials of Mana Remake. Now, this doesn't have the multiplayer component that the original Super Nintendo release has, but what this does have is a gorgeous 3D environment that brings the original's visuals to life in a bold new way that hasn't been seen in a very long time in a Mana series. But what's great about Trials of Mana is that you can build a party of 3 at the very beginning of the game from a cast of 6 characters, and each character plays dramatically different from one another. One of my favorite parts about the game as well is that it has this expansive class system where every single character's class can be modified in different ways that alter their playstyle dramatically. Best of all is that all 6 characters have individual endings. So while the completion time of roughly around 20 or so hours is accurate, if you really like the game, you can just go back and play the other 3 characters that you skipped out on at the beginning, allowing you to experience new classes, new gameplay styles, and several brand new stories that live up to the Mana name. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I love this Trials of Mana remake, is because if you really loved your first playthrough, there's so much more that you can do in the second playthrough with the new characters. Simply put, I love the Trials of Mana remake, and I encourage you to check it out when you have the chance. And those, my dear viewers, are some amazing recommendations from my friends and myself if you've got a hankering for a short RPG that's below 30 hours long. Now, if you have any other recommendations of any JRPGs or RPGs that are below 30 hours long, please post them in the comments below so we can talk about it. And if you enjoyed this collab, I want to remind you that I have a special collaborations playlist that you can find on my channel. So if you love this, you can find all of the collabs that I've made, as well as all of the collabs that I'm in on this playlist. So go check it out. Also, let's not forget that there's going to be a ton of other games that are coming out later this year. And I actually made a video that contains about 30 or 31 or so games they're going to want to pay attention to. In addition to that, I actually also talked about 5 of the games that I've been playing recently, and you're going to want to check out which games these are, because while they're not JRPGs, I'm pretty sure that some of you are going to want to hear what I have to talk about for these games. Both of these videos are linked for you right now, so go check them out. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.